All right, so today we're going to be diving into the exciting world of multifamily property investment. We'll be talking about a lot. And I'm joined here by Andrew Cigna from the Above All Realty Group. And Andrew, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Cigna. I've been in commercial real estate for 8 years, 7, 8 years now. Started off investing in single family flips, went to duplexes, then went into multifamily. Now we're really entertaining all sectors of commercial because for commercial, there's about 10 different asset classes, and all of them have their own value and their own strengths. With residential, as everybody knows, the LTV is way behind schedule and claims, so we're shifting our focus, and I'm seeing more and more people do the same thing. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to be on the show again to talk about multifamilies. I know that that's your big topic right now because it's a hot topic.
Absolutely. So, what I'm going to do today as we go through this slideshow is I like to just tell stories and I like
Yeah.
to create characters because it's always good to learn by going through an example. So, in today, we're going to be talking about Alex Jordan. She's a persona, she's not real, but we'll be going through her eyes. And like many of you out there, many of the clients that I talk with, all started out with that first house, buying their first family home and then graduated. And I'm sure you've got a lot of experience with your clients where, maybe they bought a couple condos, they bought a duplex, maybe they did a conversion to a triplex. And that's what's happened in Alex's situation, right? She's actually in this situation, she's got some experience. She's worked with a contractor. She's got engineers that she works with. She's got a commercial realtor like Andrew here. And she's bought some investment properties. And now, where she's at in her stage is to dream of something bigger. And Andrew, that's multifamily. So, talk to us a little bit about some of the multifamily options that are out there, whether it's 5 units, 8 units. Talk to us a little bit about that market, Andrew.
Yeah, so there's really two strategies when it comes to multifamily and almost any commercial property. It's value add or turnkey properties, and not one's not better than the other. It's just different strategies and different exits. At the end of the day, a lot of people are really focused on value add because you have that forced appreciation, which is great for some people. But other people, they don't want all those headaches. They don't want to deal with that whole team and dealing with property managers. They just want put their money, park it in a piggy bank, let the appreciation happen after so many years. Either sell the asset or let their child inherit it. But every strategy is a bit different. Everybody's exit strategies is custom to them, as it should be. But neither one is better than the other. I personally like value add. I come from the background of construction, so understanding how to produce the best product for the best return is kind of my forte because I know where to save money and where to put money. A lot of people, shortchange themselves when they should be actually putting more money into a certain part of the renovation because if they're going to keep it for a long period of time, the life expectancy of that building material is not going to be worth it. So if you have to replace something 3 times in 5 years compared to replacing something once after 10 years, it makes a big difference. And a prime example of that is using cement board in a bathroom. It's a little bit more expensive, but
Right.
it's not going to decay.
Right.
Instead of people are like, well, I put the green board. It's like, yeah, the green board's fantastic, but that can decay, right? It does have paper in the actual coating of the gypsum board, so it can decay over time. The life expectancy is longer than drywall, but shorter than cement board.
It's so true. And from a lender's perspective, the way you underwrite those deals are completely different. We'll definitely dive into that in a little bit later on. So to kind of sum up on what Andrew's talking about here, so Alex has an option. She needs to choose whether she's going to take a value add strategy in this investment or a turnkey. One is more hands on, going to find diamonds in the rough, seeing what she can do to improve that location, whether it's structural, whether it's operational, that sort of thing. Or like Andrew said, one's just it's hands off. It's just a turnkey approach. You're finding a property that's already got income streams, that's already got tenants, and that sort of thing. So those are the options, and I really appreciate you talking a little bit about those two strategies. Now let's move over, Andrew, to the value add, and we're going to look at like a little bit of a business plan, so to speak, or just what kind of plan that Alex needs to put in the initial stages, the things that she needs to consider before ever even putting in an offer or submitting a deal to a mortgage broker. So, talk to us a little bit about what goes into the plan, Andrew, when it comes to the value add strategy.
Yeah, so during Alex's journey, it's really important that I'm assuming she's already had a lot of team members, agents, brokers, lawyers, accountants. Now they're going to be changing those vendors. Now, not everybody's going to be able to handle the same. Not every contractor understands the difference between residential construction and commercial construction. Different codes. So understanding that is extremely important, because the last thing that you need is a contractor putting in residential material in a commercial build. And because multifamily is classified as commercial, a lot of the materials need to be used with commercial. So building out a new team for specifically commercial type of acquisitions is extremely important. Make sure that you interview each one of them, understand that they have experience in that sector. They know what they're doing when it comes to the actual renovation and the actual project, right? Then once you have your team in place, you start hunting for deals. Everybody's like, oh, I'm not buying on market. I personally disagree with that. I like buying on market. The buildings that I've made the most money on were not the biggest, but they gave the best IRRs, and they were smaller, about 6 to 10 units. You got in, we got out, but we got them on MLS. And the reason being is because if you have a good commercial realtor who has experience with negotiations, they can get you a better deal than dealing with off market. Sometimes dealing with a seller is absolutely atrocious, and dealing with an agent who wants to sell the building, it's easier to negotiate a better price. That's my personal perspective on it. Everybody has their opinion on that matter, but I like to deal with people that are in professions that have the same intentions to get the deal done. MLS is a great way to do that. I'm not saying that there's no good off-market deals out there. I just find that sometimes wholesalers can be very aggressive and make the numbers not work. So I recommend taking a look on MLS.
Got a question before we move on to like inspection and needs assessment, that sort of thing. When it comes to property analysis and market analysis, I've heard, and obviously from a lender standpoint, we look at this stuff too, is cap rates can play a little bit of a factor when you're trying to compare kind of apples to apples in the same market. Could you just walk us through how that works?
Yeah, so cap rates, they fluctuate, right? So the higher the cap rate, the cheaper the building, the better the deal, right? So the higher the cap rate, the better the deal. Everybody kind of gets that backwards. So you're obviously always looking for a higher cap rate, and there's a direct correlation between cap rates and interest rates. So, when you start seeing people are going, oh, a 4% cap rate, I'm like, that's impossible. Commercial rates are at 6.5, 7. So how is that even possible? You can't do it. 5.5, 6. Okay, I get it. But there's got to be a direct correlation. The cap rates that are at 4 don't make sense anymore. You will die if you buy those properties. So cap rates are important, but it's not the end all be all. It's where the uplift is, right? So let's say you could buy something at 4%, but you renovate it, and the new 5% will bring you a whole bunch of appreciation. Also take that deal as well. Right? It is a factor, but not the end all be all, depending on the building itself. Every deal is on a per cases basis.
So in this case, if we sum up where we're at right now, so Alex is gone. She's built her professional team.
Yep.
She's done some market analysis and property analysis.
Yep.
And now she's ready to move into that inspection and needs assessment stage. And this part's pretty important. This is where she's going to need to require whether the property requires upgrades, repairs, right? Could be structural improvements, cosmetic updates, or if efficiency enhancements. And that's specifically if you tie that to the MLI Select program, that could be pretty beneficial as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But love to get your insights on that inspection and needs assessment.
Yeah, so inspection is extremely important, especially when you're dealing with value add properties. It's very important on turnkey properties as well, but not as important as when it's value add, because you can lose your deal on underestimating a construction budget. It is very important to deal with professionals that understand structural, they understand building materials, life expectancies of building materials, they understand certain inspections. So, fire inspection is a big one when you're dealing with multifamily. When was the last time the fire system was inspected? Was it ever inspected? Because if you're dealing with distress, I will probably put some money down that they were probably never inspected. And when you start getting into that sector, if you're going to charge premium rents, you need to have a premium product. Apple charges premium prices because they have a premium product. You can't charge Apple prices and have a Nokia phone. It just won't happen.
No offense
Right?
to our Android users out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And if you're looking to be like, oh, I'm going to push rents, well, you need to deliver a good product. Like you can't have half-ass. That's why turnkey, having inspections on turnkey is important because everybody's like, I got a turnkey product. Then you go in there and you're like, this needs to be re-renovated because I guarantee you went with the cheapest price and to kind of uplift and try to maximize dollars. And that's what you see across all these investors is they do the cheapest work and try to get the max rent. And yes, that's a great business model, but again, it's not sustainable because you need to have a good product. I'm sorry, but like a lot of these investors half-ass renovations, and I hate the product that they're delivering. It gives a bad name to good investors that want to give a premium product.
Interesting.
So inspections are super important. If you have a good contractor and have that relationship already, in Alex's case, because she's starting new, make sure you get an inspector. But if you already have a team in place that you feel comfortable with, having a contractor go in to do the inspection is sometimes better. They have the more experience in the field. They're more hands-on with the construction. Inspectors are inspectors. Contractors deal with it hands-on. That's why sometimes it's better to deal with an experienced contractor than an architect and an engineer because the guy that's hands-on knows how to problem solve a little bit better than the guys that are more book smart. You need the book smart guys to handle loads and calculations like that, but guys that actually work with their hands to rectify problems are better problem solvers.
So true. And if you're even thinking about going into the MLI Select program at this point, you're going to need to work with an engineering firm, not just any old engineering firm, but somebody that actually knows how to do these efficiency audits. Because what they're going to do in that report is they're going to go and do a baseline audit on the building. They're going to look at the current efficiency of the building. They're going to create a specific report for you that's going to tell you here's exactly what we need to do on the HVAC side, the Windows side, whether it's insulation needs to be changed. They're going to tell you based on these things, maybe we can make a 15 to a 40% reduction in greenhouse gases. Well, that's going to get you to a number of points with the MLI Select program, which could potentially get you into much lower rates and up to 50-year amortizations, right? So, but you need to this needs to be part of the plan. So I just wanted to add that as well. So if we move over,
you need to put money into the renovation. Like you can't just half-ass the renovation because you're not going to qualify. Like this is where some people are like shortchanging themselves. It's like spend a little bit more money because you're going to save on the long term. People get that twisted, which it doesn't make sense to me, and I calculate that to a lot of our projects, and we don't win because we calculate that. But as you're seeing now, people are falling short because they didn't calculate stuff like that. So in due time, the cards show.
Yeah, and once you've done all of this, once we get through it all here, once you've done it once, you're going to get more efficient at it. You're going to get it faster at it. You're going to build, whether it's spreadsheets or just checklists and that sort of stuff, to make sure that you stay consistent when you start looking at additional projects down the road. I want to move on to quickly on the financial analysis and budgeting. And I think, so if we were talking about Alex right now and, she's got that inspection data, now she can start to crunch the numbers. And she can start to estimate, renovation costs. She can forecast the improvement to income post-renovation. And she can analyze how these changes are going to affect the property's value. And at this point, this is where Andrew, right? She can create that budget, and that budget's going to be essential for her to not only show the lenders that she understands what she's going to do, but whether or not this deal is going to pencil. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
and that's the thing is like people are like, oh, I'm just gonna put a budget to it. These lenders, they want to know the details of that budget. You can't be like $100,000. It's like, okay, they're gonna be like, for what?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
what we've actually done is we created a spreadsheet for everything that could possibly go into a renovation of a multifamily, from
Cool.
exterior facade, roofing membrane, to the knee walls on the exterior, windows, flooring, everything that could possibly go in there. It's 100 lines deep, but some things will apply, some things won't. It gives you a total. But lenders love to see it because
100%.
one, you're very detailed, and lenders know that you're not taking it half-assed. And if you half-assed a project, you are going to be known for it, and they're going to question your ability to do it. Because at the end of the day, credibility is important to these lenders.
Oh,
right?
100%.
So, because if you like, for me, what we did is we created case studies. I don't have a long list of case studies like some of these people do, but my numbers are very impressive. And that's where I take pride in, is like, I'm extremely detailed, oriented, make sure that the lenders are happy with what I'm doing, because if I take on a project, I know that I'm going to succeed at it. I don't take on every project and kind of, push the margins. It's like, this is my criteria. Nothing changes outside of this. And that's why I've never lost on a real estate deal, because I'm very detailed, and lenders love it because lenders make the deals happen.
Oh, for sure. So once she's got that financial analysis put together, she's put together her budget. The next step is to actually put together the value add development, like the strategy. And this is what Andrew's talking about. The lenders want to see, what exactly are you doing? What's included in that plan? So what are the specific improvements? What are the projected costs? And what's the expected increase in property value, whether that's the value of the property post or the rental income post, right? So they want to see that into the plan. Thoughts on that,
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, no, like, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit there, but yeah, that's basically everything I talked about, because
Right.
they want to know every detailed item. And you can do it in multiple ways. You can have 100 different line items. Are you doing it time and material? Or are you doing it unit costs? Right? If you really want to get good and impress the lenders, do unit costs. Because then they're like, okay, these guys aren't kind of dicking around, because that's what big commercial contractors do, is they go off unit costs, because then it doesn't fluctuate.
Right.
X is X. Now you have a contingency for waste and a contingency to go over budget, but at the end of the day, they're knowing that you're going very detailed. And the more detailed you are on a project, everybody's impressed. And then when you impress a lender, you're ready to go for the next one when you succeed on this one.
100%. Which kind of brings us to the next point, which is the Alex's preparation to get prepared to submit something to someone like me to do a construction loan. And so, to fund the renovation, she's going to need to secure a type of construction loan. We'll talk about those in the next slide. But what we're going to look at is that value add plan. We're going to look at her financial analysis. We're going to look at her own personal financial statements. We're going to look at detailed projections of the property's performance post improvements. And then, more importantly, the lenders are going to want to look for a plan that's both real, and Andrew talked about this, realistic, achievable. And if it's not achievable, walk away. But more importantly, it's Alex's capability to manage the project. So I get a lot of questions on this one, Andrew, is like, well, what if I don't have experience doing a value add on like a 10-unit deal here in Hamilton? What are my options? I'd love to hear. I've got some of mine, but I'd love to hear your options. What are your options?
First and foremost, if you don't have experience, partner with someone that does.
100%.
100%. People are so focused on having the whole grape and not a part of a watermelon. Because at the end of the day, the value that you get from partnering with an experienced investor is, one, you start getting credibility. Two, you get all the experience and knowledge that they've already went through. So why do things twice? Learn from other people's mistakes, and that's the best way to do it. It's the cheapest. I can tell you that right now. When I first started, I learned the hard way on a lot of things, and it's just going to save you so much time. When I first started, I partnered with a guy who had multiple buildings, plazas, apartment buildings downtown Toronto. He taught me basically everything to get started, and then I flourished from there. And that is what I recommend for anybody looking to enter into the commercial space, is because if you partner with them, you have the case studies to support it from an experienced investors. Lenders love it. You could speak onto that.
Absolutely. And then the last piece there is that risk assessment and contingency plan. Lenders definitely want to see that. So with Alex, after she's got to this point, she's going to need to evaluate potential risks. And Andrew will talk a lot about this. I'm sure you've got lots of stories, but construction delays, budget overruns, market shifts, and she's going to need to develop a contingency plan for those specific things. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'm sure you've got a
Yeah.
few horror stories.
So the biggest thing is the process of a permit. That's the longest thing that everybody's like, 2 months. It's like, where? What city can you get a permit in 2 months? I haven't seen it. I'm sure you could probably expedite it, but I have never seen you get permits in 2 months. Now, there's ways to implement it where you submit an offer and you could start the process of getting a permit under the previous owner's name, and then it gets transferred to you. Now, that's a different way. When you have a creative realtor, they can put that into the APS, but you need to also plan for delays, carrying costs for those delays, because permits don't happen overnight. Designers, they don't produce a drawing in 1 week,
Mm-hmm.
right? It takes a few weeks, and then they submit to the city. I've never met a city that moves fast. I don't know about that, but
We are
I
in
have.
Hamilton, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Hamilton's like they're being compared to Toronto, and Toronto's a nightmare. So it's some municipalities are way better than others, but it's the smaller ones, which is great. And if you're entering those submarkets, fantastic. But they are still not quick. But you need to anticipate that. And then delays. A prime example is during COVID. We had a supply delay.
Right.
You couldn't get material even if you wanted to pay double for it. Right? Like that was a big issue. It's like, okay, well, we got guys, but no material. So what are these guys going to do? Right? So there was all those type of delays, and that can happen again. No, in a blink of an eye, that can happen again. If it happened once, you can definitely history can repeat itself. And then dealing with contractors, human error. Contractor does something by mistake, and it's like, okay, you just lost a week because he's redoing it. He lost money because now he has to redo it. It may not be your direct expense, but you lost a week.
Right.
The way I like to do it is I calculate how much a day costs me. A day costs you X amount. A month costs you X amount. If you start calculating on how much money you lose on a daily basis, you can even break it down to an hourly basis. You'll start evaluating and handling projects a little bit differently.
So cool. All right. So that sums up kind of the secret sauce that goes into the value add plan. And obviously, it's not an extensive overview. Like we're just doing a basic overview right now. But I thought that was very informative. What I want to do now is just move over to the construction loan and talk a little about, okay, so if Alex has done all of the things we just talked about, what are our options when it comes to financing? So from left to right, I'll talk to you about these things. We have the CMHC MLI standard. We have the MLI Select program. We have the apartment construction loan. So wait, before I move on to the apartment, so in those two scenarios, what's happening here is CMHC is going to provide a certificate for insurance. You're still going to have to go out and get the financing from an additional lender. Whereas the CMHC construction loan program, CMHC is actually going to fund this program so that you're getting the funding from them. The next up, you can get construction financing from conventional lenders like your credit unions, etc. And then, of course, you can do bridge loans and short-term loans through private lenders. So those are basically her options. And I'm going to do another video, Andrew, where I'm going to go detailed and deep on this. But for this one here, I just wanted to review the options. The next slide, let's move over to TurnKey. And I want to talk a little bit about how it's different. Like when you're thinking about the secret sauce or what's included in your plan for a turnkey, it is a little bit different, I think, especially in how you're evaluating properties compared to a value add. So I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah, so turnkey is completely different. it's a different type of investor that, they want to park their money, use it as a tax benefit. They want to just let the building appreciate over time because rents are going to continuously go up. Their strategy is one of their biggest strategies when you have a turnkey building that's already been renovated is to decrease expenses. Because you can only increase rent so much. Is the big thing is decrease expenses and add additional streams of income. So a prime example is going from free laundry to coin laundry, adding a vending machine in the common areas. That's a big one because that does produce it, right? Those will add income to the NOI, which add appreciation, and you don't need to do renovations. And when you buy a turnkey building, the systems are already in place. Now, can they be improved? Probably. And if that type of investor wants to improve them, they can. It's just more of a piggy bank type of scenario where it's like, I'm buying this, leave it to operate, just let it kind of run, and let's worry about the appreciation later.
So true. And what are some of the tips that you can give the viewers, Andrew, when it comes to identifying the right type of property? What markets are we looking at? What's hot right now? And then what type of property should Alex be looking at?
So because she's starting off small, I recommend Alex look at submarkets. Submarkets are really, really key to have a point of entry. Some people are moving out of Ontario. Alberta is a big one. Windsor in Ontario is a good one as well. I hear that it has a really big upswing. They're doing a lot of commercial development, which when commercial development happens and businesses are going to a certain area, residential spikes because those jobs that are being created, people need to live, and they want to work hard and then come home to rest. So some markets like Windsor is good, London's good. Those some markets are really, really key. But when you're evaluating for a turnkey property, it all comes down to the dollars and cents on what you're able to handle. If you're looking for a sixplex, just make sure that the building materials will last. The operation plan is flawless because what you're doing is you're buying systems. Think of it like you're buying a business. Mm-hmm. And when you think about buying a business, you buy the systems that are in place of that business. So you're either going to try to look for a discounted turnkey so you can improve the systems, or you're going to pay a little bit more because the systems are already in place and you don't have to do anything. That's the big thing. And having a chat with the property manager is really, really key, and evaluating the property manager because they can, they've been known to not manage buildings correctly. And if you have a good one, cherish them like gold because they're not very common.
Exactly. And when it comes to doing the financial analysis and property evaluation for a turnkey, what do you see that goes into the plan for someone like Alex?
Yeah, so it's going to be broken down almost the same way as a value add. It's just going to be evaluated different at a cap rate. The cap rate's obviously going to be lower because there's nothing to do there.
Right.
The value of the building is going to be higher, and that means cap rates are going to be lower. The margins are going to be a little tighter, so you're not going to cash flow as well as a turnkey or a value add, but it will start to increase over a duration of time. Usually you see it between 2 to 5 years.
Interesting. So then when it comes from my perspective, when you're getting prepared to submit your loan application, just remember that if you're not comfortable, if this is your first time doing a commercial mortgage, the documents are heavy. It's document heavy. Like some of my biggest files in my software are my commercial deals, right? Because I do both residential and commercial. So things that you're going to need to get prepared. Think of yourself as a business. If you have a bunch of rental properties, it is a business. So, they're going to want to see personal financial statements. We're going to need proof of income for you. Although we're going to be looking at the property's evaluation and how well the property basically pencils. And we're going to need to look at your own investment history, and you need to show that as well. And then on the property side, we're going to need current rent rolls. We're going to need occupancy rates. We're going to need a detailed breakdown of all the operational expenses, right? And a number of other documents. But it's a long list that you're going to need to definitely get prepared. And the idea here is when you're working with someone like me and you provide all these documents, what we're going to do is we're going to package that and position them. The majority of the work, Andrew, that I do is figuring out how to position this properly to a lender, right?
Yeah.
So that's preparing for your loan application. When it comes to the business plan investment strategy, I think you talked a little bit about that as we went through here, but maybe talk about the risk analysis and mitigation that is a little bit different between a value add, because obviously there's delays and construction issues and permits, whereas with turnkey, what are the main risks that come into play?
So the life expectancy of building materials, like how was the construction done?
Mm-hmm.
That is a big one, and the system. So I've already kind of touched on a lot of the risk portion of it. Like it's if the system's flawed, you're gonna have a problem, and really doing a good due diligence on it is important. A due diligence for a turnkey and a value add should almost be the same length because you're evaluating the systems, you're evaluating the product. You want to see what kind of building materials were used. Is it a $5,000 kitchen or is it a $20,000 kitchen, right? Like you need to evaluate the product at hand because if that product starts to deteriorate, like you're going to be dumping a lot of capex into it, and it should be a turnkey. You shouldn't have to worry about renovations a year or two in. You should be hands off completely, right? So understanding how it was renovated is extremely important.
So true. Well, that brings us to a close on the turnkey business plan secret sauce. Now let's. I want to talk a little bit about from an underwriting perspective how these two are different. We're not going to go into major detail, but just a little bit of a summary for our viewers and what Alex should think about. So, first let's talk about the value add strategy, and this is just typically associated with obviously your commercial construction loans, but in this case, the lender's evaluating the potential for the property after improvements. And this means, they're looking at the future value of the property, the borrower's ability to execute on the plan to increase its value. They're underwriting based on the project's ARV or after repair value. Andrew, I think you just did a video on that the other day. I saw on TikTok. Anyhow, and the borrower's renovation plans. And this really involves, assessing not just the current cash flow, but projected cash flows, the experience of the borrower in completing the similar projects we talked about, and the specifics of the construction or renovation plan. And these loans for the underwriter are generally higher risk due to the reliance on the successful completion of the project for repayment. So typically what you're going to see is a little bit higher interest rates and additional guarantees, so personal guarantees on those types of loans. In fact, 100% guarantee on construction loans. Where on the other side, we have the turnkey strategy and typically financed with the conventional commercial loans. And here we're underwriting the process is way more straightforward. The lender's assessing the current performance of an income producing property. They're looking at existing cash flows, occupancy rates, tenant lease agreements, the overall condition of the property, which Andrew talked about. The risk here is generally lower compared to a construction loan because the income is already established and making it easier for the borrower to cover the payments. So as a result, you're going to see better interest rates. You're going to see more favorable terms compared to construction loans. So that's kind of the difference, Andrew. I don't know, is that typically what you see compared to the two strategies when it comes to underwriting?
Yes, that's 100% it. Like what people don't understand, especially when it comes to construction loans, is that there's so much risk there because people make so many mistakes on evaluating construction. Like I can't emphasize that part of real estate investing enough, is because people think they run numbers, but sometimes the most important number is incorrect. They evaluate construction at a low price, and it's like there's no way that you can come in at that because I know costs are at that point.
Right.
So it's impossible. It's impossible for you to be at that rate because I know what the costs are of building materials, labor. I understand that. And lenders know this exact same thing. Lenders are some of the top people, and they understand how to evaluate it properly, probably the best in the industry. and you can't half-ass it with them. You need to make sure that you're very detailed, understand the construction, and they have the most risk exposure when it comes to construction loans. That's why they always want 100% guarantee on it, because there's so much risk to it, because people don't know what they're doing.
100%. Well, that closes off that piece for the underwriting. Let's move on to the next slide. And here, I don't know. I'm a numbers guy, Andrew. I like to pick things apart, but I also like to do it on a calculator, but I also want to be able to do it on the back of a paper napkin. So that's why I'm talking about these three ratios and metrics that lenders and investors look at. There's so many more. You mentioned IRR earlier. That's a whole other can of worms. But I just want to talk a little about how these three metrics are used in commercial financing and investing, and how to actually create the formula for it. So I'm going to talk about cap rate, which we've talked about throughout this whole presentation. I'm going to talk about DSCR. I'm going to talk about cash flows, and we're going to go through each one of those right now. And then Andrew's going to weigh in on how he uses these with his investments and evaluating investments. So we'll start with cap rate. I know we've talked a lot about that today, but capitalization rate, commonly known as cap rate, is really just a real estate investment metric that's used to calculate the expected return on the investment property. So the rate's pretty straightforward. It's not complicated. It's found by dividing the property's net operating income, or NOI, by its current market value or purchase price. So this is essentially, the cap rate's going to help investors understand that potential return on their investment before financing costs. Thoughts on the cap rate?
No, that's the biggest topic, is that it's before financing, right? Some people are like, well, is it net? It's like, no, you still have other stuff that you got to pay for.
Right. Exactly.
Right? There's debt. People need to be paid for debt. Money's not free, unfortunately. But yeah, so it's pre debt interest. So you need to still understand that there's still expenses after capitalization rates evaluated.
Cool. So let me just quickly go through how that works. Let's say we had an NOI on a property for about $1 million. I like simple math, Andrew. Purchase price is 10 million, and the cap rate here would be 10%, or a 10 cap rate. So that's the formula. That's how you create it. There's lots of YouTube videos on it if you want to go into deeper detail, but we're not going to do that today. The next step, though, is an interesting one, Andrew, and that's cash on cash returns. And so, do you want to take this, or do you want me to take it? It's up to you.
I'm going to let the finance guys deal with the finance stuff.
All right. So cash on cash return it's a percentage that shows how much money you make on the real estate investment compared to how much money you invested initially. But it only looks at the cash you receive. So it's a simple way to understand it is to go through piece by piece. So I'll start with cash received. So this is the money you actually receive in a year from your investment property. This includes rent and any other income. So that any other income was what Andrew was talking about earlier. This is that changing over the laundry and putting in a vending machine, that sort of thing. This is additional income that could be added. And then so this includes the rent, any other income, and then after subtracting all the expenses like maintenance, management fees, and mortgage payments, that's your cash received. The cash invested, pretty straightforward. This is the total amount of cash that you used to buy the investment. So that includes your down payment, your closing costs, and any upfront cash payments that you made to acquire the property. And then to calculate the return, to find that cash on cash return, is by dividing the annual cash received by the total cash invested, then multiply that by 100, and then you're going to get your percentage. So for example, if you invested $50,000 in cash to buy a property, and then after all expenses you received $5,000 in a year from that investment, your cash on cash return would be 10%. So that's $5,000 divided by $50,000 equals 0.1, or 10%. And that's how you can look at it. It's like if you're going to compare, anybody has cash. So if I had $500,000 in cash, and I could put that into the S&P 500, I can put it into a GIC, what's that return going to give me, right? So cash and cash is going to show you the return on the cash that you use for this real estate investment, right? So that's how that works. The biggest one I want to talk about today is debt coverage ratio. I don't know why there's so many different acronyms for this. You have DCR, DSCR, but to be honest, this is probably the most important one for me as specifically as a lender, because it's one of the metrics that they look at on whether they're going to qualify a loan, right? And so the debt service coverage ratio, or DCR, it's really it's a financial measurement that allows us to determine the property's ability to cover its debt obligation. And in simpler terms, it's really just a way for us to figure out if the property makes enough money to pay for its mortgages and other debts. And you want to know that as a business owner. You're never going to buy a business that's losing money, right? So DSCR allows us to figure that out. So here's how it works. First, you need to find out the property's annual net operating income, or NOI. So this is the money the property makes from the rents, other sources, minus the costs of running it, like maintenance, taxes, but not including debt payments. Then you have your debt. So you calculate the property's annual debt service, which is the total amount of money needed every year to cover all the debts related to the property, such as the mortgage payments. And then the ratio here, pretty straightforward. You're just going to divide the NOI by the annual debt service, and that's going to give you a number. So for example, let's just say the property's NOI is $120,000 per year, and its annual debt payments are $100,000 per year. The DSCR would be 1.2, so that's 120,000 divided by 100,000 gives us 1.2. So now let me explain what this means, and this is where it's going to ring the bell for our viewers and for Alex. So a DSCR of 1, that means the property's income is exactly the same as its debt payments, so it's just breaking even. A DSCR greater than 1 means the property is making more money than it needs to cover its debts. That's what the lenders are looking for. Whereas a DSCR less than 1 means the property isn't making enough money to cover its debts. Walk away or figure out another way to do it. But so lenders are typically going to use the DSCR to decide whether or not to lend you money based on that property. So generally we're looking 1.25 and higher, depending on the lender. If you're using the MLI Select program, then we can do as low as 1.1. So that's how we use it.
That's insane, because before it was 1.2, or they wouldn't even look at it.
Right.
That was usually some of the biggest first question that you ask the lender. What's the DSCR? I'm like, well, it's like 1.15. They're like, no.
Exactly.
It's very crucial. So them dropping it down to 1.1, that's impressive. That's a game changer.
And it's deal for deal. Like, it's not just about the thing is, everyone thinks it's loan to value or loan to cost or it's a DS. It's not. The lender's looking at the whole deal, and that's why it's so important to package it properly, right? Any other comments on debt coverage ratio, or can we move on?
No, I'm glad you explained it, because you can explain that way better than I can. That's why financing guys deal with financing and realtors deal with realtor stuff.
Yeah, I'm a nerd. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, because I get a lot of questions about this, and then we're gonna just sum everything up and then end the video. But when it comes to the value add strategy, there are 3 stages of mortgages or loans that you're going to need. So think about it as simply as this: like, you got to buy a property. So whether it's vacant land that you're going to build new on, or whether you're going to buy an existing property that you're going to retrofit, you need money for that and funding for that. And typically these are shorter term loans or bridge loans, and there's lots of options there to buy those. And then once you put your whole plan together that we talked about today, and we're not going to go through that again, but we went through a full extensive explanation of that plan, then you're going to apply for that construction loan. So during that time, Andrew, you can give me an example of like how many years or months it takes to complete a project. What do you think? What's on average to complete a construction project?
It could take, depending on the size of the project, it could take 1 year to 2 years to execute a project efficiently. Like, let's be honest here. You got 2 months planning, permitting, minimum.
Mm-hmm.
You got what? Depending on how to deal with the tenants, if it's already occupied, like that could be. That's a big thing that people don't take into account in their spreadsheets. 90% of multifamily investors do not account for cash for keys. You have to take that money from somewhere.
100%.
Like, it's not free money. So if you don't put it in your budget, you either have to take from your construction budget and put it to it. It's an expense. You need to account for it. Like, a lot of people don't account for the money and the time. And it's a big factor that people are not taking into account And the other big factor is people empty the whole building all in one shot. Don't do that, because unless you have a high volume of capital, that would make sense to do. But you need to make sure that your operations are able to execute on it efficiently. The problem is if you empty a building, all of it, you have no streams of income coming in. So you're basically carrying the whole building with no cash coming in whatsoever. So what I was doing is doing a third, a third, a third, right? So you start with a third, get them processed, and then once you're done that process, you start with the next third while those units are being renovated. I've actually even moved tenants from an older unit to a newer unit because they were okay with paying the market rent, right? Ask them, like, do you want to pay the market rent for the new unit, right? Instead of just kind of being like, get out. But I'm more a little bit empathetic to tenants. I look at them more as customers, so I try to have an open dialogue. Some people don't want to have open dialogue, so it's not easy. And you could offer them thousands and you're not going to get them out. But that's the process. It's anywhere between 12 to 24 months. It could be longer depending on the tenants.
Right. And what the lender's looking for to get to the next stage is now the project is completed. You know, you've stabilized your rents, and now it's doing what you said it was going to do originally in your plan. Then we can look at doing longer term loans. This is going to be a conventional loan with a conventional lender with longer terms, better interest rates, and also that personal guarantee can get a lot less, like maybe 40%, right? So
Yeah.
depending on the situation, deal for deal, that sort of thing. But that's basically the three stages. So that brings us to close here. Maybe just provide a bit of a summary, Andrew, on what we talked about on value add, and maybe some final thoughts for our viewers, and maybe for Alex.
So everybody's journey is a little bit different. Everybody needs to evaluate where they are on their journey and what stages they're at in their journey. What I say is don't rush the process, because if you've had your ear to the ground in the real estate industry, a lot of people that rush the process right now, their process and journey is ending because they got bit with they got bit during the COVID boom. Now there's going to be opportunity for people that were level headed during the crazy times. Just make sure you don't rush the process. Everybody tries to do everything, and they should just stay focused on the one thing that they do really well. If that's value add, great. If it's turnkey, great. Just make sure you do what you do well and do that.
Perfect. Well, that's it, everybody. I want to thank you for watching the video. If you want to reach out to myself or Andrew, our contact information is going to be in the show notes. And thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Have a good one.